Neda فرشباف.
Yeah, perfect.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to see you.
I thought you were practicing still.
No,
Say my name.
not practicing. I got it. You know I got it. Salam.
Salam.
Chituri.
Khubi azizam.
That's about where it ends for me.
I know. Most people know those ones.
How are you?
I'm good.
How are things?
Great. It's great to see you. It's great to be on this set. It's a beautiful set.
Thank you.
Feeling like I'm back in LA doing the LA thing.
Yeah. No, we've been talking about having you on for a minute. We finally made it happen. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
I want to thank Hala for introducing us.
Yay, Hala. Shout out to my Iraqi sister from another mister.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
Great friend. She, introduced us about 4 months ago, and we hit it off quite quickly. You and I.
We did.
It's great, when you come across people that you just get along with immediately. So I feel blessed, to have met you.
Me too. I feel like I'm back in the US, but like still with the Middle Eastern vibe, because that's I think why we clicked. All the Americana stuff, but also being in the Middle East.
I think so too. Can you give us a little background on the Middle Eastern connection? Because obviously you're from Iran originally.
Yes. So I bounced around a lot as a kid. My dad was with an American oil company, so I was a little expat kid, and then landed here in 1992.
Here being the UAE.
Dubai. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dubai, UAE, 92, when there was a Ramada Hotel and a Hardee's. That was it. There was no McDonald's. It was like, what are you doing? So we moved from Canada to here, and I graduated high school here, ended up going to Toronto for college and New York for grad school. And my career was in the US for the 18 years that I was there. And then my parents are here, we're very nostalgic for our parents. So I want to come back home, be near them. So I landed back here 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it feels like home, but obviously it's like a third culture for me because I don't even speak Arabic. It's really bad, actually. But all these years.
You fake it well, I think. The
I know the core. Yeah. How to order shisha, how to order,
That's about all you
hummus.
Need, right? Yeah. all the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you say career, what would you say your career is, or where have you kind of landed?
I always at my core say I'm a journalist because that's how I started. That's what I fell in love with. But over the years, I'm a video producer, and I love producing meaningful content, impactful content. It's become such a buzzword. Even as I say content, I kind of feel like,
I know that there's the word content. And then there's also in the content creation, there's the epic B-roll and cinematic.
Yes.
It's like words that if you hear one more time, you're just going to off yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. But it all started with storytelling. That's what it was back in the day too, with, newspaper articles, writing a story about somebody. So that's how I started. I should say I always wanted to be a journalist.
Is that what you went to school for?
No.
Okay.
I studied political science. I was supposed to go to law school, like many journalists will tell you. That was kind of the thing. And my parents, Persian parents, I was just going to say, you will go to law school.
Yeah.
I remember when I told my mom I don't want to go to law school anymore. I love my mom, shout out to mom, but she was like, what am I going to tell people? I'm like, what do you mean? It's my life.
It's not a shame.
Yeah. And you're going to be a starving writer. You're not going to make any money. So I ended up going to grad school and studying criminology of all things. Cause I love forensic files, Dateline. Remember back in the day, Dateline, 48 hours, investigative journalism.
This is pre-CSI.
Yeah, exactly. So forensic, a big part of the curriculum obviously was forensics and all that, but then also at the time, Homeland Security was a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so I needed an internship my final semester, and I saw at CNN, there was one at Time Warner Center, and I applied to it, not having any business applying.
Is this in New York or Atlanta?
New York, sorry.
Okay.
So grad school was New York City, and there our headquarters for CNN is in Atlanta, but of course there's a huge bureau in Time Warner Center in New York and in DC.
Right.
So somebody passed my resume to DC bureau because they had a Homeland Security beat, and they were like, we need somebody like this. She speaks Farsi.
What year are we talking about?
This is
here?
2000 and you're going to make me my age, 2008.
Okay. So this is well after 9/11, because that was, became such a big thing.
It was still a hot topic.
I mean 2001 to about 2006.
Yeah.
If you have any kind of security clearance, any kind of second or third language,
exactly,
you were in high demand.
Yeah, exactly. Because I didn't have a journalism degree. A lot of the interns, at CNN, especially in New York, are from Columbia J School, because it's top school. Yep. And in Atlanta, they're usually from University of Georgia, which in that region is a really good school for journalism. But I ended up going to DC. I did an internship there and I just fell in love. Like DC is a cool bureau because you're constantly going to like where the actual news is happening. So, you go to Department of Justice, you go to the White House if you're on that beat. And as an intern, I always say you do the cool stuff. And then when you get hired, they're like, clean the IFBs. You're like, wait, what?
Can I go back to being an intern?
Yeah, exactly. And so from there, I ended up, I'm Persian, as we discussed.
Persian.
So yes,
like cat, yes.
Like, like a carpet. What does he say? I am not dangerous. I will not hurt you. Iran has a nuclear program, but I'm Persian. Yeah. So Krishan Amanpour was in New York, and she had just started her show Amanpour, which is still in today, but she does it from London. Yep. And I remember thinking, like, I want to work for her so bad. Like, it would be such an honor.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. Like, she's the only person my entire career that I was so nervous around her. Like, nobody, and there's been lots of guests and people and whatever. Like, I never was freaking out until I had to be around her. And she was so kind and warm and welcoming. And she was like a mentor and just no ego. Anyway, so I decided from the internship, like, I don't want to just become like a production assistant in DC. Yep. I want to work on Amanpour. And they were like, you can do another internship. So thank God my parents like approved, because I had to go to New York with no income. Yeah. And it was just like magical. Like, they had 6 interns on the show.
Wow.
I was the only one who got to like have face-to-face contact with her because I worked with the producer that did her research. Okay. So we would prepare, and I say we, but really Megan trusted me because I was an older intern. Like, I had done grad school later. I was like in my probably 26, 27 at this point. They saw I was smart and capable. So they would let me do the full research for the entire team the day before the guest. So I would do the full research packet. Sure. And then you'd brief Krishan while she's getting like her makeup done. And she's very involved. And she taught me so many lessons about like, being on top of your game and standing up for what's right and all these things. But from a professional perspective, I learned so much about knowing what I'm saying before I say it. Like, she would ask for clarification on some of the research and I would be like, oh, well, I think so. She's like, well, do you know or not? Because I'm not going to say it, and you're just like, I'll check.
She's a veteran. I mean, she knows her stuff.
Yeah. And so and I get it. Like, she would write the intro. Imagine this woman who is such a senior person. She would sit every day with the senior writer and write the introduction to the show that she would be saying on teleprompter. Not a lot of anchors do that. So she was very much like, that's my face. I'm going to be saying it. And we had cool guests and it was a great experience. Anyway.
Is that to personalize it? Or why do you think she did that?
I think it's to personalize it. I think she doesn't want to use other people's words coming out of her mouth. Yep. The tone, she wants to set it. Because a lot of anchors that I worked with, they just show up. I mean, there's some that are very involved, but there are some also that just read the teleprompter,
You write the stuff, I read it.
Exactly. To the point that there were some incidents in Atlanta where they pronounced it wrong. You were like, did you not even read the script before? But everyone's busy. They have their stuff to do, but she was very involved. And I would have stayed with that show probably for many years, but it was during the time, I don't know, only the Amanpour nerds know this. She left CNN briefly for ABC.
I remember that, yeah.
And that was when I was there. Okay. And it was like, now what? Like, I was supposed to work for your show,
Were you tied to the Amanpour brand at the time? Like, so in the absence of Amanpour at CNN, was your engagement with Amanpour or with CNN?
It's CNN. Okay. Like, you're a CNN employee or Time Warner employee. But all of my contacts, I had worked with the team that was Amanpour's team as an intern, and they were going to make me production assistant, and it was like planned, and it was a very hard decision for her. And I'm sure she wouldn't mind if I told the story. Not that, I'm sure she has lots of things to do, but if she ever sees this, I'll never forget. I stumbled upon her in the bathroom before she was going to go tell the team the story of like, I'm leaving to go to ABC, because it was the first time a woman had hosted the show. It was like a big deal. It
was a big deal. Yeah, it was a big deal. And she is a big deal. I mean, there aren't many women that hold the space that she does.
Yeah. Exactly. To have changed, it's like what everybody gets into journalism for, to have changed the trajectory of something. When she got involved in Bosnia, like, stuff happened, And not only is she a powerful woman, she's also very empowering and she's a huge advocate for women and women's rights. And 100%.
And she leads with that. You can tell she leads with that, So I just think that, if I had a daughter or whatever, I would love for her to look up to someone like an Amanpour, because I don't know. She's boss. She's total boss.
And she is, you know, you meet a lot of people and you're like, wow, you're nothing like I thought. She was actually so funny, so quirky. She used to like, not snowshoe, but like she lived across Central Park in the wintertime. She would like the shoe thing like across in like a snowsuit. Like she's just a quirky person. And she really had a hard time at that time in the bathroom. She was like, I have to tell this team, because then those people who are employed on Amanpour's show, they don't have work anymore, right? So it's yes, you're a CNN employee, but you don't have a show anymore. So
where do we
you're
plug
unemployed. Unless you can get plugged in somewhere else. But, you know, she eventually came back and she was, she went to London, and I thought about it. But at that point I had already moved to Atlanta. My husband, who you have yet to meet, I have to introduce you. He was in law school in DC. And I made him move to Atlanta. I was like, go to Emory. You got in there, like just transfer schools. So I was like, I can't go to London if he just moved. So I just basically built my own name in Atlanta. You know, in news, there's programming and there's news gathering. So I started in programming, obviously, and then I went into news gathering, which was exciting. And
tell me more about what that entailed in terms of programming.
Programming is when you work on a show or several shows. Like in Atlanta, you were attached to 2 or 3 shows. You can either be an associate producer, writer, producer, senior producer, or supervising producer. And there's little teams that they build out. It's really based on schedule. And you essentially do a lineup for the hour, right? A block, B block, C block. With all of the top stories.
Explain the blocks, you know, let's just get,
for sure. A block is your lead story, usually breaking news of the day. A lot of
is it a timed thing, or are they timed?
I mean, you do want to fit everything in before commercial, right? And so you can break it down. If you want to do one thing on the whole, like use their whole A block for one story, you can do that, or you can break it up into maybe you want a little segment on something else. But basically, a big component of CNN International was live correspondence. So you would have like Nick Peyton Walsh from Beirut, because there was a blast there, like in the A block within the first like minute. So you have the anchor intro, and then we're joined by Nick Peyton Walsh, and let's go live to him. And so eventually I got into, which I think back now and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? A live shot producer, which is that poor soul
that's high pressure
in the control room that has to like get the BGAN. Well, you obviously coordinate ahead of time,
for sure,
right?
But like, I mean, like you're responsible for so much. I mean,
and like I used to have nightmares about black air because it's live. So it's like if you, and you know, you plan as much as you can, but if the guy's in like Djibouti, like you just never know what's going to happen. And so, I did that in programming for a few years. But in Atlanta, especially in CNN International, the international desk was like where it was at. Christian worked there, and that's sort of where they deploy you to different places. And so I went into that to do news gathering. You write a lot more for .com, so you get bylines. Like there's actual tangible things that you create. And so I went into that, which was more of news gathering and just journalism, old school, making calls, getting information that you then feed to the shows, and then they go live with that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was exciting, but it was exhausting.
I can imagine. What kind of hours were you pulling there?
You know, my first full-time job at CNN, like the staffed position, was the entry level is called a video journalist. And VJ, that's right. Which it's just like, I thought it was like what MTV VJ, but it's not.
It's like cool.
You do a lot of cool stuff, but you also do a lot of stuff that's, like I said, cleaning IFBs. That's a real thing.
It's not TRL. It's
no.
not.
And for those of you who don't know what IFBs are, like you put it in your ear when you're live. And so afterwards, like it needs to be cleaned, and that's all I have to say. It was gross. You run teleprompter, which now in hindsight, I'm like, wow, they let the newbies run teleprompter, not on the prime shows right away. But
still, that's a lot of faith you're putting in.
Yes. I mean, you get training and stuff. You run scripts. And when you get up to like a certain level as a VJ, when you're more senior, you floor direct, which was awesome because you're working with like the anchor and you're on the floor with the headset and talking to control room. It's very cool. But eventually you're supposed to move out of that role. Like it's a year or less. But my very first shift was 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. With Monday and Tuesday off. So I used to wake up at 2.
Oh my God.
And I lived in like central Atlanta, not central, but like where all the clubs are. So I would be, everyone was like drunk, like walking home, and I'm like drinking coffee. Like I had to go to work. So yeah, that was the beginning. And then with the international desk, you work overnights for 6-month rotations. And it's not even just being at work. It's like it never ends. Because if you're on a story, like it's always developing.
Yeah.
And so your phone is just always by you. So I needed a change eventually. And I went into documentaries.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to do like beautiful long form storytelling, docs. I mean, what a dream job. That was a very coveted unit at CNN because nobody left, right? It's like 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, like unheard of. I don't know if you're familiar with an anchor. His name's Jonathan Mann. He was like top guy at CNN. He was telling me one time, he's like, I haven't had a Christmas in 22 years or something. You know, you just didn't get those kind of hours with news. And it was a lottery, even for senior people. They would do a lottery every year at CNN.
You get Christmas off this year? Oh my God.
Yeah. And it happened like once every few years for somebody if they're lucky, you know?
What year are we talking here?
Now we're at 20.
Is this post newsroom or pre-newsroom?
When was newsroom? Because, you know, I never really got into it like everybody.
I was going to ask because I would think for people who are into news, like that's your, look, if you're a doctor, you know ER, you know Grey's Anatomy or whatever. I'm a huge fan of Alan Sorkin, and he's just such a, about this. So I don't know, like it made news exciting, you know what I mean? Like
it is like that, by the way.
Yeah, I think, well, that's kind of why I wanted to circle back to that. I wanted to know if you, even if you'd seen, you know, snippets of it, did it feel anything like what working there was
100%.
Like?
100%. Especially, I don't know if you remember in Sorkin's show, I remember this because I was like, damn, they got even that right. You would get these alerts. So everybody is logged into like a system and you pay, because everybody thinks like, oh, CNN's breaking the story. Like everybody, Fox, NBC, they all pay for wire services. So there's Associated Press, there's Agence France Presse, and Reuters.
It's like an RSS feed. It's
exactly.
It sends all,
and it's color coded, just like it was in the show. And there's red, which is urgent, and orange and yellow. And so you'd always hear these beeps. And if it was something bad, like a bomb in Tel Aviv or whatever, it was like, and you immediately like,
that's very good.
Yeah.
Your sound effects are very good.
Thank you.
You probably have it, like you have the right key and everything.
I know. I love it so much.
I love it.
And then it was your job on the news gathering side to confirm that story with your sources, you know? So luckily we did have people mostly like in the major parts of the world, we had bureaus and stuff, but if it was some remote place in Africa, you know, we have stringers, what they're called, but essentially freelancers. And there's a database, a stringer database. So Sorkin. So this is 2011. I don't know when that show.
It's around that time.
Yeah. He did really. I mean, he must have done his research, right?
Well, like, he's so thorough with that stuff, and you know, I'm sure he adds a lot of realism to it. You know, and he sandwiches. He's just great at just working things that have nothing to do with anything, and he'll just weave it into the story and make it something amazing.
Yeah, I remember. I saw a few episodes, but I remember at the time I was like, this is too real. Like, I live this.
You're like, I already have to do this, like, you know, 10 hours a day.
It's definitely, it get, you know, in your 20s, it's like, let's do it. It's exciting. The people that I know that are still there, because literally I left in 2014. And I left, I'm happy to say it. Like I was working the docu and I loved it, but we had to drop what we were doing to do a 3-hour documentary on Donald Trump. He wasn't even the nominee yet. And I was like in month 2 of reading books.
But he had announced that he was going to run?
He had announced, but he was one of like 12 candidates for a Republican
And by then
nominee.
People were still like, there's no way this guy makes the cut. Or whatever.
Right. I mean, he was gaining traction, but it was still like, there were so many people. Like I remember Jeb Bush was when I was like, why aren't we doing a thing on Jeb? Not that I wanted, but it was just like, it's not fair. And also I had to read his books and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like as a matter of principle, like I'm leaving. Because now I joke, I'm like, well, maybe the Biden's gone, like I can go back. But yeah, it was just that decision to leave in 2014. But up until then, it was like a dream situation, especially documentary unit. I don't know if people have seen CNN documentaries. There's 2, right? There's 2 different types. There's the ones that they just buy at like film festivals. Actually, I should say there's 3. There's the ones they buy at film festivals. There's the ones that they post-produce only. So like Bourdain's show.
I was just going to ask about.
Yes.
Does that fall under the doc series?
Doc unit. Doc series. And that was like, I never touched. I mean, it was just like this beautiful thing that.
I thought it was a CNN produced. So I'm assuming the third kind
it's
is
0.0 Productions, which was his production company. I think it still exists. Really nice people in New York. So whenever he would be overseas, it was interesting. I worked with him when I was on the international desk. How? Because when Bourdain was in like Morocco and stuff, his team would check in with the desk.
Yep.
And when you're on the desk, you're given a region. Most of the time it was like continents, unless
a coverage region. You mean
yes.
Here?
So there's like, let's say 12 of us on shift.
Yep.
Neda, you're going to do South Korea because there was a ferry that, you know, capsized. That's a big story. And always the Arabic speakers were given Syria.
Of course.
Poor Saad, my good friend Saad Abedin, like God bless him. That man created the coverage that CNN had because of his sources in Syria.
Yep.
And so when you're given those regions, you're not only responsible for the news.
Did Arwa Damon do Syria also?
Arwa was in Syria.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going to say. Like, you're not only given the region to cover the news based on like, I don't know, local television, whatever, you have your correspondents in those regions too, right? Yep. So yes, Arwa, Nima Al-Bagher went a few times. Arwa is a fantastic person. She's very kind. There's just a lot of great correspondents. And Ivan Watson is a really like seasoned dude.
They have their act together.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that old school journalism.
For sure. I mean, we'll get into, I have some issues with where CNN went post President Trump.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it turned into our mission is to get this guy out of, you know.
Yeah. I mean.
And it's just almost to the point where like, I'm not a fan of Trump.
Right.
I wasn't necessarily, no, I'm definitely not a fan of Clinton. I didn't vote that year because I didn't like my options. That's the freedom I was afforded as a U.S. citizen, right? But they like blatantly turned it super anti-Trump to the point where I'm like, I'm starting to like Trump now. Do you know what I mean? Like just because I'm like,
because you're bombarded with it.
Like enough. Like I just feel like they were, you know, tooting his horn. It's like, because he's a media savant. The guy knows how to work the media. Like that's probably what a lot of people underestimated about him is it seemed almost random, but there was very little randomness about, he's very calculated in my opinion.
Oh, 100%.
And you're playing to his strengths. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, it was interesting to watch unfold, right, in real time, because at CNN, like most news agencies, there's a 9 a.m. call and everybody from every bureau gets on that call given the time constraints.
A stand-up meeting kind of a thing where like, and all hands are all...
Yeah, everybody calls in. Most people are listening, right? Like 90%. But Jeff Zucker, who's the president of CNN, he leads the call and they talk about what the top stories they want to do and this kind of stuff. And so it was getting to the point I was like, we're going to talk about Trump. We're going to talk about Trump. And I think, I mean, this is public information. Like Zucker was president of NBC when Trump was at NBC.
Doing The
Apprentice. So they have a history. Like it just, I don't know what, and I think that's why Trump hates CNN so much. Like there's so much baggage and it's just like, you're right. I mean, what I was saying before is like nobody I knew at CNN is still there because of that. Right.
Yeah, so, you know, we were talking about the correspondence and stuff. I just feel like it had, I don't know, it had more credibility in my eyes pre-Trump. After Trump, I mean, I still like a few anchors and stuff, but I'm turned off. Like I'll go to CNN here and there, but I'm just really turned off by the whole.
Yeah, you're not alone. I've heard that a lot. And I think to be fair, let's differentiate between CNN International and CNN Domestic. It's two totally different channels. And I think in general, domestic is constantly trying to compete for ratings and stuff. Right, unfortunately, there's some that cross over, like Anderson Cooper's show, Amanpour's show,
Blitzer, maybe
Wolf Blitzer's Situation Room, and Fareed Zakaria. Yeah, they're on both networks, but for the most part, like it's different programming, you know. I think now it's been more simultaneous programming because
is Gupta's also Sanjay's show?
Does he still have a show? I don't. If he did, it would have been on both. Yeah. If he does, and he's lovely as well. This is the thing: when you're a VJ, you're dealing with all these guys because like you're in the studio and they're shooting and they very kind, warm, no status, ego thing. But yeah, all of the producers I knew, all of the writers, they've left. A lot work for the CDC, funny enough.
Are you serious?
Yeah, because it's in Atlanta. CDC is headquartered in Atlanta and they have a huge media thing. And of course, now the pandemic, like it made sense.
I was just going to say, like, you know, those lines were blurred, especially there was a clear separating line between CNN International and domestic. But because of the pandemic, you know, I know like here, we don't get the US. I mean, we get mostly here being the UAE, we get mostly CNN International.
Yes.
But like they were broadcasting all the Cuomo, you know, Governor Cuomo stuff. And it's like, I felt like I was, you know, in the US.
Well, this is what I was like. they will simulcast, and that's a decision from the very top. But it kind of endangers a lot of the producers working for international. Like a few of them that I know that aren't there anymore didn't leave on their own volition. Like they were, you know, asked to leave because there was just no more need to have original programming from the international side. So they simulcast a lot because there was, I would always say, like this fallacy that people in the Middle East or Europe or Africa like cared about the same things as the US. They just, I think that a lot of Americans that are in the very American sector, they think that. But yeah, like there's only so much US politics people here want to watch.
I feel so removed being here, and you know, both in a good way and in a bad way. Like if I want to tether back in, I don't feel like I get it as straight from the source as I did when I was there.
Yeah.
So again, it's been both a blessing and a curse. Mostly a blessing because I've intentionally disconnected. Because
oh, me too. Once I left, it's like embarrassing how little I knew about what was going on. And being a news junkie, like that was kind of a pride to know like the latest, the best, you know, whatever. But now I'm just like, oh, I know my reality shows. I mean, now I'm plugged back in because I just, you know, it's like I have to be for life because of this new era we're in. But yeah, after I left CNN, I literally took the hardest left turn.
I love this.
And I worked for a reality show on VH1. And this is a good like tip, if anybody.
Which one?
A very successful one, a franchise, Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. Yep, the most ratchet, the best. I mean, at the time they were like, because Jocelyn, you don't know the show? Do you know the show? Jocelyn Hernandez was on there. She's like a Puerto Rican princess, very big star power. And so ratings were super high.
How many seasons did they do?
Oh God, I think it's still running. I think they're on season 11 now. And by the way, now there's a Miami franchise.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like the Desperate Housewives of City X, and then they moved it around.
Yeah, but like...
No, but I mean, like it's
really just way more ratchet.
No, I get that. But I mean, like, you know how they had like the Desperate Housewives. Was Beverly Hills the first one that they did?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Orange County was.
Orange County, and then they kind of moved that. And then there was New York. There were other, you know, so Love and Hip Hop.
Correct. You are correct in your trivia. There is now a Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
That's what I'm saying. You know, it's like, so they branded it and just, they're like, let's just take this and repeat it.
Oh yeah.
In this
and the woman who owns the franchise, she's actually an ex-music person, Mona Scott Young. I can't remember, I don't remember what label, but it was the one that like Busta Rhymes and stuff was on.
Island Def Jam, I want to say. No. Or he was on Busta Bus. He was on Flip Mode Records, but they were an imprint of... Yeah,
I don't remember. Forgot. Sorry. I would Google, but
I do know the name.
Yeah, she combined those worlds, right? Because like that's what Love and Hip Hop Atlanta is about.
That was super smart.
Or New York, I think, was the first one, which everybody, you know, if you don't know, that's where Cardi B started. And so yeah, it was really cool. I literally went on LinkedIn, typed in Love and Hip Hop Atlanta producer, found a guy. His name is Gavin Lee. He's awesome. And I was like, hey, would you be interested? Because I had no experience doing reality.
Did you have any connection to him? Or?
Nothing. He just saw CNN and he is a CNN junkie, which I think is really cute.
That factors in, I think,
yeah. Even though like he's an amazing reality show producer, but he's like a news junkie. It's like so different worlds. And he was like, yeah, come in, let's do an interview. And I met him and the showrunner, who was a tremendous woman.
What does a showrunner do for those who don't know?
They run the show. They are, so there's two in this instance. There was talent, showrunner, and then there was story. So LaShawn, who I interviewed with, she managed the talent basically and would make sure like they're going to do what we want them to do and play along with the storyboarding. And then there was a guy named Brian who did...
How scripted is this reality show?
So most reality, from what I learned, which was devastating, by the way, at the time, because I was a junkie.
Were you shocked? Were you?
I was because I was naive to think like... Even
though you'd worked at CNN and like...
Yeah, because I watched just like any other viewer. I remember after international shift of like seeing just horrible stuff out of Syria. Yeah. I used to come home, it was 8 a.m. and I'd watch Love and Hip Hop and I'd be like, this is so awesome.
That was your outlet, right?
Yeah, it was
so instead of watching Newsroom, you'd watch that.
It's just like detach yourself. Like, this is the drama, like, haha, this is so great. And before I went to the show, I bumped into one of the cast members at the W Hotel and I told her that. And she was like really touched because I think they were kind of like, why am I doing this? I'm like, listen, you're helping people.
I'm one of them.
I'm one of them. Like, it's so, and I wasn't the only one. Me and my good friend Shruti, we used to watch together. She was another person who was a producer. But anyways, so it's scripted to a point, right? Like, VH1, I think, takes more liberties than like a Bravo.
Yep.
So like you and I really do know each other, but like, let's say we didn't like each other, right? We would not go to dinner and have drinks and try to work it out. We just would avoid each other. But then, you know, in the reality world, they're like, well, let's get them to go to dinner and let's get them to talk about it. And on top of that, you then have like talent producers that are like, yo, Zan, Neda said this about you, you know? So it's like,
so they wouldn't straight up tell them what to say. They would just create situations that's going to produce drama. And that was all like calculated by the story executive producer or showrunner, whatever. He was a bald guy named Brian Shormack. Genius. He writes still for like the Miami series. Yeah. He was like a mad scientist, just like writing it all. And was talent aware of that? And were they cognizant enough to play to that? So that
the more senior ones knew. Like, so basically how it would work is story EP creates the storyboards.
EP being executive producer.
Yeah. Showrunner, whatever you want to call them. And it's like, this is episode 1, these are the acts. And then my job was a story editor or producer, whatever you want to call it. I would take that and go to the field and implement what they call a beat sheet. Mm-hmm. So we have to make sure that like Zan discusses what happened over the weekend and Neda, you know, addresses the fact that she's upset with him for this or whatever. There's beats. And so
because they want to plug those in into the edit. So they already know what they want to put together. And they're like, make sure we have something that covers this.
Exactly.
This.
And the guy in LA, who's the post-production manager, really great name, Steve Uncles.
I love it.
He was awesome too.
Sounds like a radio background or something.
I'm sure he did. He would want that beat sheet and then also to whatever happened like in real time, because sometimes they don't play, right? Yep. And the showrunner, the talent showrunner, LaShawn, who's fucking...
It's okay. That's fine. Yeah. It's all right. That makes the cut. We're talking about love and hip hop. Come on now.
Yeah, she's a badass woman. Like I have so much respect for her. And she told me, she's like, Neda, these guys are going to try to be your friend because they want to know what's on that beat sheet, and you cannot be friendly with them. And I mean, you know me, I'm so like, hey guys, like we're all friends. But it really was because they wanted to know like, where are you taking my story? You know, I want to be in this more or whatever. So it was a weird position to be in because most people in that room for story don't leave that room.
What did it feel like to hold so many secrets that other people wanted to know?
I mean, it was definitely like nerve-wracking because I am a very truth person.
Yeah, you're like, I want to tell you, but I can't. But I want to tell you, but I can't.
I shouldn't talk because I always end up like spilling.
I love it.
But I was scared enough of LaShawn to not do that because she, you know, you mess up everything then, you know, it's like the whole plan. So her and I were the only ones from that story room that would go out on the field.
But they knew you had the insight.
Yes, they knew. They'd always be like, what are you doing on your computer? What are you doing? And I used to be the one, you know, when you're on set, you're plugged in and all the side conversations that are happening.
You're listening, yeah.
Not only listen, like taking notes.
You're like, we can use that. We can.
Yeah, exactly. And I've told
you're
you
like CIA on set.
Exactly. This is what it's like to be a spy.
Yeah.
No, but it definitely taught me a lot about storytelling. Because at the
end
of
the day,
how many
seasons of Love and Hip Hop?
I just did one, and it was actually like a joint project with Stevie J. Leave It to Stevie was the show, and Love and Hip Hop as well. I didn't do the full like thing of Love and Hip Hop because it's a 9-month project.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a good friend, I think I mentioned to you, she ended up going and doing that. But yeah, it's definitely grueling.
Before I cut you off, I didn't mean to. You were saying I definitely learned
storytelling. So say what you want to say about reality. Like that is like character development, storytelling that will hold your attention for 22 episodes. Some of these are right. And in the US it's real time. Like it's whatever it's called, appointment television. You know, people have to like either DVR, but it's not like a Netflix dump. So they got to tune in next week. And so I learned a lot from that part about like really being creative because yes, it's reality, but you can have them go like to, I remember at one point we had Stevie go to like, TP, like meditation play. Like, he would never do that, right? But it's just funny, like situational comedy type of things. So it was definitely great. And if I was younger and not like married with with cats, married with cats, I would have done it. But it's just grueling. You're out late at night. You're waiting on talent a lot of times. It's 18-hour days. But it was definitely a cool experience. So very different than CNN.
What was demystified for you after having done that?
Just
all of reality or just that specific
Well, because on that show, I worked with a lot of people who worked on like Real Housewives of Atlanta and like TI, Family Hustle, right? Mm-hmm. Like for the most part, like.
Was TI the biggest thing to come out of Atlanta in terms of like, was he in Atlanta?
Yeah, he's in Atlanta.
I mean, so I'm saying as a show though, was that like the show that kind of blew it open for other shows?
No, I would say Love and Hip Hop.
Love and Hip Hop,
yeah.
Okay.
And The Housewives of Atlanta was a very good, big franchise. At one point, I think it was the best one, which just says a lot because Beverly Hills is a big one too.
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't know which one came first, but the TI Family Hustle show was really good too, but it was on a different network now. Or was it on VH1? I don't remember. But anyways, it definitely like pulled the curtains back, right? And you realize it's a lot of people management. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of creating situations that are interesting versus like, oh, these people lead really interesting lives. Mm-hmm. Because the reality is like, if you shoot something how I thought you shot it, which is you just follow someone around forever, it's horrible.
Their lives are so interesting and they can't be that interesting.
It's not.
So how much of that category was, I mean, obviously the Kardashians aren't the first reality, right? Mm-hmm. Neither are Newlyweds. You remember Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey. But how instrumental or how impactful was the Kardashians for other shows to do as well as they did? Would you say it had something to do with the success of?
Yeah, I think the good thing that I've seen from the Kardashian show is like you what you get is what they are, what they are. Like it really seems like, yes, I'm sure they create scripted situations, right? Like that they go to a chalet and camp or whatever. But this authenticity, bringing your real self to the game, right? So it's like I can create as a producer like this situation that we're going to script, but you have to show up and give me like who you are. Right. And so I think that for a lot of producers was like, you need to get like the real person out of your talent. Yeah. And that's for everything. Like every time I produce anybody, I'm like, you know, people want to be like, relate to you. They want to hang out with you. Right. Like they want to know you. Like, that's why they're going to watch you, not because maybe you're pretty or whatever, but that only lasts for so long. Right. It's like, they have to actually think you're cool and want to hang out.
They have to relate. They have to love or hate you.
Exactly. And even the hate part, it's like, because they're giving you something. It's not just like this filtered is not like censored version of yourself.
Yep.
And I will say, I mean, the Kardashians, like the sisters are fighting with each other. Like they're going there, you know? And I've seen in an interview before, Kim said, or one of them said, like, when we agreed to do this, we promised that we were going to show everything. And like, it does seem like they've allowed that. I mean, it was what, 18 seasons or something? They had to show everything.
I've never watched a single frame of that show. So
it's funny you say that.
It's been a long time.
I'm a junkie. I've maybe seen like 3 episodes because I just couldn't bring myself to like get in. I just felt like that was too far.
Too far in what sense?
Too far in like hype, buying into the hype of like reality and Instagram and like this new world that we live in where it's like.
It definitely felt new world-y with them.
Yeah.
You know, even though they're not the first kid on the block.
Yeah.
But there was, remember, like with 9/11, there's definitely pre-9/11 and post-9/11. With Corona, there's going to be pre-Corona and post-Corona.
True.
There was definitely a pre-Kardashians and post-Kardashians.
Yeah.
And so again, they're not the first nor the last, but they've kind of...
Because it was a multi-pronged approach, right? It wasn't just a reality show. It was product. It was, you know, advertisements. It was all the stuff, you know,
everything at it.
Genius of their mom. I read a quote once, the devil works hard, Kris Jenner works harder. It's like, she's a genius. Like she's created this empire for her kids.
Yep.
But anyways, definitely, I think that part of it, I would take that away. Like, even though I watched everything. Do you remember the guy from Poison? Brett's
Poison the band?
The band, yeah. Was it Poison that he was in? Brett.
Oh yeah.
This guy had a reality show.
Not Brett Michaels. What's his name?
Brett Michaels was a wrestler, right? No, Brett Michaels. It's Brett Michaels. Yes. He had a reality show where he like found love or whatever. Yeah. I watched that, but I wouldn't watch the Kardashians, which is like insane.
What was your reservation, or why did it feel like it was taking it too far?
It felt like I was going to become part of that machine of like, you know, the following on IG and like consuming the product and buying the makeup and it was like, no, I just want to be entertained and like that's it. I don't want to be invested in your life, you know, which I feel like a lot of people who are fans, they're like invested. Sure. A girl I used to work with was like obsessed. She would refer to them like they were her friends, and I'm like, you don't know these people.
I mean, 18 seasons is a long time, and you know, a lot of people, myself included, said, "Okay, everyone." Okay, let's start the clock. 15 minutes.
Oh yeah,
and they've just sat and plopped.
Yeah,
and it's insane.
And they're interesting people. I saw her on Letterman. She did Kim Kardashian.
My next guest needs no introduction or something. Yeah, like that.
I mean, there's clearly she has like an X factor. They all do, right? That you want to watch them because a lot of times too, when I was shooting at Love and Hip Hop and Leave It to Stevie, there'd be moments where I'm like, this is boring, you know, but whether through the magic of post-production or a good producer, like
there's so much magic there,
dude.
That's where the magic is. I mean, unless you're like someone with like uber charisma.
Yeah.
You can't carry something like that without post-production.
Exactly. Especially when you have like 4-hour shoots, you know, like people tap out, they're exhausted. It's the end of their day. Like it's a dinner party. They don't want to be there. So for them to create those moments in post, it's why they're paid big bucks, you know? And I had a previous employer that she would always be like, oh, but you know, on this reality show, like we only shot for this long. And at the end of the day, like they made it look like this. And I'm like, babe, those guys get paid like $250,000 at least dollars a year, you know? Like we don't have that kind of talent right now here. I mean, I know people like that, but you got to outsource. So it's like you pay what you get for it. And I think those guys, rightfully so, get paid big dinero.
I bet.
Same in CNN, like the post-production editors for like the the guys that know After Effects, right? The guys that really know music. We were talking about this, like how big of a role music plays
absolutely.
In setting the tone. Like they can turn a really crappy shoot into like gold after.
For sure. I mean, you can make a lot out of very little if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And conversely, if you don't know what you're doing, even if you could have gold and just don't know how 100%. To present it properly. 100%. So there's a lot of unsung heroes behind the scenes that never get to see the light of day, or, you know, they're not exactly thankless jobs, but, you know, there's a lot at play.
Yeah, they're the ones that roll through the credits that nobody sees.
Yeah, it's like fireman number 3, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that guy kind of, but the editor.
Yeah, no, I'm just, it's a joke, but
Yeah, that's so true. I always think about that, you know, when you see like the guy who's fireman number 3, like he wants to be the lead.
Of course. I mean,
you know,
and he's like, working his way up, but, you know, he starts as a non-speaking extra to a speaking extra to like, you know, I remember do you remember Alias with Jennifer Garner?
Yeah, of course.
So they did a show that was similar called The Service. They shot it in Baltimore.
Okay.
And I'd never been on set. I mean, I'd done some acting as a kid or whatever. And I just finished a photo shoot for an album cover that I was working on. And so the photographer sent my pictures to an agent friend of his.
Okay.
And she sent me on this job that was supposed to be an extra. So you know who Justin Chambers from Great Adam?
Yes.
He was there. The super famous, whose name I don't remember. She's a Iranian actress. She was in Crash.
The older woman?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yes.
She was the leading role. She was like
I don't know her name either.
So it was a pretty big. I mean, it was a pretty big production, and I think they'd ordered 7 or 8 episodes or whatever. So I was only supposed to be a walk-on extra. It turned into a speaking, so like I saw the progression, and I caught the bug actually for lighting from that set because I went at midnight in Baltimore. So it's pitch dark outside. It's in a warehouse. I walk in, I'm like, why does it feel like it's 1 p.m.? Do you know what I mean? Because it's weird. So I was like, how are they able to do that? So I caught the bug for like more behind the scenes sort of stuff. But
I didn't know that though. Is there footage of this anywhere?
It never made.
I didn't go to air.
No.
Yeah, this is another thing people don't realize, like how much stuff gets like left on the cutting room floor or doesn't make like a pilot, you know?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't know that you were doing acting.
I mean, it was a side thing. It wasn't. I wasn't pursuing it. It was just because, again, I'd taken some pictures with a friend who sent it to an agent, and I knew I was going to go to LA, and I figured I'd dabble in it, but I just never had enough time, you know?
Yeah, there's so many people involved in the process, right? Like, I don't know if you heard a few days ago, there was like a rant. Tom Cruise was yelling at, people for not wearing their COVID masks. Or
I heard something about that, but I didn't actually
hear. There was an audio clip somebody was recording. He lost his, temper with the crew because a couple of them weren't obliging by the COVID rules. But he had good points, right? He was saying like, people can't pay for their homes because we're shutting down. Like there's so many people involved in this.
It's a privilege to be working right now, especially.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, exactly. Yeah. So many like little, I mean, reality, it was a big production, nothing compared to what a movie would be, right? No, like I can only imagine what level that is.
And it's like you're paying millions of dollars a minute. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
Those things, I just saw a thing the other day. You know, he's someone, because he produces all his movies.
Yes.
Tom Cruise does. Yes. So he's allowed to do his stunts, whereas normally no one will let you.
Why.
That's the only way.
Okay.
And Jackie Chan, if you know who he is, there was a point where he produced his movies and he did the stunts.
Do the stunts.
Otherwise, there's no way they'll let you. No insurance company would actually insure that.
Right.
So he was able to do that. So get this, on Mission Impossible, not the last one, the one before, on one of the jumps, he actually broke his leg.
I remember hearing about this.
And he delayed production by like 6 months, and people had to be on standby getting paid thousands a day while he got better.
Wow.
So it's no joke. I mean, there's a lot of money being spent.
I can only imagine. Yeah. I remember like the reason why reality production was so grueling for me was because even if the talent was 8 hours late, the company had paid for a crew for the day. So they were going to use it, you know? And
especially
so
if there's unions involved.
Exactly.
And stuff like that.
So you're just sitting and you're like waiting because you're like, well, they're getting paid, so they're not going to go home now. And then hopefully we can get an hour or two at the end, you know? But definitely, like there's so many unsung heroes, and I think this is the first time, by the way, I've ever been in front of the camera. Like I realized this on my over here. I'm like, I've only been behind the camera because it's not only comfortable, but like you said, there's magic to be made.
Oh, for sure,
back there.
No, but you're comfortable. I mean, because a lot of people, once they snap back into the, oh my God, I'm in front of a camera, they panic. You're at ease. You don't feel like, and
thanks,
plus having the headphones also completely like
I know it
shelters you. You're like,
it's like happy place.
We're right here, right? We're conversing.
Yeah. Now I see the camera. I'm like, oh my God, that's right. The camera's on.
You can wave.
Wave
to the camera.
Hi, camera. No, I definitely listen. I'm a producer, so I've seen that. Like, I turn it on, and all of a sudden, the person that I was like jamming with is like, "Hi, guys," and I'm like, "No, you have to like loosen up and just be yourself." I think for us, because we're both quite comfortable in our own skin, I think that is
that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
But even with that, you know, the thing is, something is lost. You know, I had the kind of unassuming when I was a kid. Again, I did a lot of plays and acting and stuff in summer camps and things like that. So I was definitely outgoing. You lose that if you don't. You know, and I'm sure you've heard of many celebrities or people who sing who have stage fright. You're like, how can you have stage fright?
Yeah.
Like Zayn Malik from, One Direction. I feel so bad for him. He's so talented, but he gets severe anxiety attacks.
Really interesting.
You know, so you don't know what triggers it. I mean, you can, but like Ricky Martin, same thing. I mean, Ricky Martin, there was a time where on stage, after they're done from being in front of the people, they feel super empty. So it's not, people think it's so
that
easy.
I can imagine depletion.
The psychology behind it. So I'm saying I kind of lost it, even though I've always been outgoing, but there was definitely a time when I got back in the camera. It didn't feel as quote unquote
seamless.
Normal. Yeah. You're like, camera. So that hyper awareness is definitely there until you break it again. And then, it's just, it's like riding a bicycle.
Yeah. And also like not to watch the footage helps.
Well, if in my case where you have to edit it.
I was going to say, good luck with that. I'm not going to watch it.
But you know what I found interesting is it's not necessarily the how I look, it's the how I sound.
Yes,
most people, because they're not used to, a lot of pictures have been taken of you, so you may not love all of them, but you've at least seen yourself from different angles. But you very, very, not rarely, you've not heard yourself until you've heard yourself.
Cringe. Like remember back in the day when you would hear like a voice message on someone's phone, or not phone, when answering machines were a thing. I'd be like, oh, that's what I sound like.
Well, and so there was a little trick, right? Me and my best friend Erica, we always like anytime one of us had a cold, because you sound like 10 times sexier. Like, I am not, like that's when you did it and you kept it for years and years, right? Because you're like, okay, I know that's me, but it's so much fuller and so much better sounding.
It's like your demo tapes and someone hires you, you're like, I need to get a cold.
Exactly. It's like, yeah.
We need to explain for the kids out there, an answering machine was an apparatus with a cassette tape in it, right? It was cassette. The
original, yes. But I mean, we were hip enough to not, I mean, we saw that, but for us, an answering machine was literally when you call someone, if they don't pick up, it would take you to voicemail. So it wasn't necessarily a physical thing.
But that's like, now they have that in the States, voicemail.
No, they do. And it's surprising that people...
On your iPhone you're talking about?
Yeah. Any phone really. But I was really surprised actually, since we're on that topic, that voice notes here are so much more common than in the US.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is.
I had a hard time adjusting to the voice note experience because, you know, most corporations, companies, email, maybe a text once and then phone calls, you know? Yeah, I think, honestly, I think it's just easy for people.
But it makes sense if you think about it. It's actually a lot more practical than typing, especially if you're driving, or, I mean, you shouldn't be texting and driving.
Yes, but agreed.
I mean, it solves a problem far quicker than actually, I mean, I get it. Sometimes you don't want, like, if you get a voice note and you're in front of people, if it's a text, it's easier to be discreet and private.
Yes.
Whereas a voice note, you have to like start it and then like put the phone up or whatever.
Yes. I think it's a lot more invasive to the person receiving it. It's a lot easier for the person giving it.
Yes. Agreed.
And I think, listen, I agree with you. There have been times where I've been like, okay, I understand it better because it was spoken to me, but my biggest pet peeve is like giving me instructions to do something on a voice note, because then I'm taking notes and replaying.
It defeats the purpose.
It's like, because you didn't want to do it.
Put it on text. It's a lot easier for me to refer. It's like, what second did he talk about the part?
Exactly. But for the person giving, it's like so easy because it's like blah, 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 and then they throw it out.
If used properly, I think it's great.
Yes.
But it can be misused very
My husband
easily.
has a theory. It's the lowest form of communication, because he's saying that it's like, I'm too lazy to text you and I don't want to talk to you on the phone.
Right, exactly.
Because realistically too, it could be a phone call, right? Like, especially when it's a back and forth.
You know, I don't know if it's a cheap thing or whatever. I mean, in the US, minutes or talk time is no longer a thing, whereas here it still is for a lot of people.
True.
So
that's a good point.
Part of it is like money saving, which I understand, but I much prefer, my preferred method of communication is this, what we're doing, face to
having a
face.
conversation.
Short of that, I would say it's a phone call, not a text or a voice note.
Yes.
I mean, leave that for not emergencies. I mean, everything doesn't have to be an emergency, but like I'm a call, like talk to me. What's up? You know,
exactly. Again, like you said, when you're driving, I've done that before. Voice note, hey, I'm running 10 minutes late. Really sorry. I'll be there soon. Right. But it is invasive. The person there, I know that they're receiving it in the restaurant. They're having to listen. Like it's not the same kind of situation. But
Agreed.
It must not only be an Arab thing, because I know like in Africa they use a lot, but it's definitely like this EMEA minus the E region.
Yeah, right. No, but I agree with that. I mean, Middle East is big on that, but even in Europe to some extent. But I was surprised by how much un-American, like in the US. Like I remember my buddy Hassan, you know, we had a show on YouTube, and when I was in the US or going back and forth, like Eric would be like, why doesn't he just text? Like, I had just learned about it and she was kind of perplexed by it. And I found myself between those two
worlds.
You know, and I was like, I kind of get his perspective, but you're right. You know,
did you even use WhatsApp in the States though?
No.
No, me neither.
No. Not WhatsApp, not Telegram. Messages.
iMessage.
That's where if you're on an iPhone, but or messages, regular messages. I mean, part of it is, again, because your package is all inclusive. There was a time where it's like you got X amount of messages and X amount of minutes. But when it became like, you know, unlimited.
T-Mobile, man, unlimited everything in Atlanta.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Even to the point you get unlimited roaming data.
Do you work for them? Do you own stock?
I should.
You're like
I've gotten so many people on T-Mobile, like, because it's just, I had a good friend that put me onto it after AT&T. But I agree with you. I mean, it definitely, listen, to me, at the end of the day, it's a professionalism thing. Sure. Like, you should not be relaying really critical, important information to, because it's not just person to person. Like, I have worked at a job where it was a voice note to an entire group, like to a team with critical information, you know, and it's like, this isn't the way to do it. Like, so, because it gets lost too. You can't search for voice notes.
Agreed, yeah.
I think
there's even a culture here, even at work or like at people's jobs, they expect you to be on WhatsApp. They'll have a work group on WhatsApp. I'm like,
so many groups.
I don't want that.
Yeah.
Keep it.
Have you been fighting it?
I mean, luckily I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But I have friends who are like, but I've made it very clear. I'm like, guys,
that's great email. Though that you're able to.
Yeah. I mean, I have that, the latitude to be able to, I mean, I obviously have to answer email and stuff like that.
Which is a professional way to work.
But no, to take me off unless it's in my contract or job description that I must.
I got to make sure the next job I take, I'm going to get that in writing.
Here, they're big on that. They are so big on that. It's annoying. It's like, it's part of the culture, but just because it is doesn't mean I have to partake.
I know.
I'm uninviting myself to that party. I mean, like
so many work groups I was on. It was because it was, again, it would be like an email chain, which in theory is great because that actually works because I can search or filter or put it in a folder.
Yep.
But when I'm on a creative marketing WhatsApp group, and there's literally 20 people on there, like it's just a mess. And it's part of a bigger thing, which I'm, to tie it back to producing, a good producer is organized, right?
That's your probably most important job, part 100%. Of your job
like
description.
Detail oriented, organized, like especially when you're dealing with big scale production, like it will be overwhelming if you don't have a plan, if you don't implement the plan, blah, blah, blah. But like there's no way to organize that kind of chaos, and it's with everything. I mean, you live much like I do, like minimalism, right? Like I always say, if I have a chest of drawers filled with just like crap, that when I need that one pen that I love, it's so hard to find it. But if I would have gotten rid of all the crap and I just have my pen and my notepad, it's like right there, So with everything, it's just easier, more seamless to have.
Absolutely.
But keep fighting the good fight, man. I'll try. My next contract, I'll say,
you should.
No WhatsApp audio messages unless it's an emergency.
Exactly. I mean, you should at least communicate that if you can.
Yeah, I will. And now, as you know, I'm like doing my own thing.
Speaking of that, let's just close the loop real quick. After Love and Hip Hop. Just kind of fill in the gaps between that and here, where you are.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, once I left CNN.
Move a little closer to the mic just so that,
Once I left CNN, I was kind of lost, like, as to what to do, because I was in Atlanta and I had moved to Atlanta for CNN. Great city, by the way. Very pleasantly surprised by it because I was a little bit worried it was going to be too like small town. It wasn't. It's amazing city. So I was bouncing around. Like there were a couple of more other reality gigs I could have gotten, but I didn't want to go that route. I worked with Home Depot corporate communications for a little while.
I remember you told me that.
Yeah, which was an interesting experience. I think for me, it was just kind of like the last like attempt. Like, well, maybe I'll try corporate America. Just wasn't for me. Really great company. But did you ever see the movie Office Space?
Yes, of course.
It was like that. Like it was out in the burbs. It was like a complex that was this. And I did it for 6 months and I was like, that's not for me. But
were you doing online content?
So actually the woman who ran the marketing department, she was vice president of marketing, really brilliant young woman. She was like 34, 35. She come from Heineken. She had decided that she wanted to create an in-house production studio for Home Depot. So initially, like most companies, they were outsourcing their videos and paying like ridiculous amounts of money.
What kind of content were they making at that?
Internal and external communication. So whether it's an internal video showing like all of the great opportunities for growth in
like this, HR and non-HR.
Yes, sorry, I should say HR, non-HR, but also too, they have a nonprofit that they run. So a lot of external facing like PR type of stuff. And they had always paid people to do these videos. I mean, they did cool stuff like the foundation would build a home for a paraplegic man that's handicap friendly, and they would pay for that. That was Home Depot. They spent something like $100 million, I think, on charitable donations, like for this Home Depot foundation. It was an amazing foundation. So they would pay like, I'm talking $40,000 for like a 2-minute video, right? Like, because that's how corporate things. And so,
and plus they have a bar that, there's a certain standard that they want to meet. For sure.
But to her point, like, why can't we just have it? That's just one. I mean, they were doing hundreds of videos every year.
That's half of someone's salary who's really, 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 really good.
Exactly. Right? That you can have full time, like to do whatever you want. So she basically, and another woman reached out and they wanted to create this group called the Story Lab. And I was with the woman that hired me in charge of that. And then we hired like a bunch of, we wanted to get editors and producers and all this kind of stuff. So we were telling stories about Home Depot, which honestly, at the end of the day, they're people. Like we did a really cool story about, there was something like 9 people over the age of 90 that works for Home Depot.
Wow.
They have 450,000 employees. I mean, what was cool about it, Zan, is like, this was my experience with a Fortune 500 company. I think they're number 20.
Yeah. Oh, they're up there.
Like Q4 was like, I want to say 102 billion in revenue. Like it's a whole nother level. Right. And so they had the resources and whatever, but 450,000 employees. And I don't know why. I think I was at a Home Depot and I'm like, that guy looks kind of older. Like, I wonder how old the oldest one is. And then they gave me a list and there was, less than 10, 8 or 9-year-olds. So we went, they sent us with the company jet.
And you did a thing.
And we did a thing.
That's
and
so cool.
The 4 people, they were fascinating guys, right? Like this was obviously like one of many careers that they'd had.
Yeah.
But healthy enough to stand on their feet for 40 hours.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. So there were little gems, but like in terms of, how creative I am and how you are, it just was too corporate for me at the end of the day.
How did you tackle the fact that they were older, given that now we're in a, super hyper aware time where you say old, someone gets offended. If you say female, you're like, oh,
yeah.
Did you have to deal with that at all, or
no? Because they're old school, right? So they're like, oh yeah. One guy was Irish. He's like, I'm a crotchety old man, and you're like, I love you. Like, where did you come from? No, they were very like, a grandpa, like
sure.
really good vibe, like just excited to be featured, honestly, because not only was it a video piece for .com, it was also they have a magazine, like a monthly magazine, a feature in the magazine. So it was like really a proud moment for them.
I can imagine.
And for us, it was just like, especially my team was like a bunch of 20-year-olds, like just writing down like whatever gems of wisdom they could give us, because they clearly have lived, you know?
Of course. Yeah.
So yeah, it was good. But then that was sort of like, all right, I need to like bounce. Like either we go to New York or LA, or we go back to Dubai because my family's here. So I moved back here in January 2019. And about 4 or 5 days after I landed, I saw a job at Huda Beauty for a YouTube manager. And I remember thinking like
LinkedIn or through someone?
LinkedIn, yeah. And I remember thinking like, I could do YouTube.
Did you know of the brand prior to that?
I had seen them in Sephora, but like I didn't know that it was a person.
Yeah. You're like, speaking about that, I have a funny story. I remember when I was working at Z100. So pre-Jingle Ball, we used to do this teen magazine, did a kind of a, so the way they would do it is like, do you know who Aaron Carter is?
Yeah, of course.
So like it
Nick
would
Carter's
be,
brother.
Yeah, exactly. So it would be someone who's not quite big yet.
Yeah.
So for instance, a Shawn Mendes, and then within 6 months, he's big enough to be on the actual stage.
Jingle Ball, right?
So I remember, so I was running the pre-event show, and I had the walkie-talkie, and I get radio like, Kenneth Cole's here with his daughter. I'm like, Kenneth Cole the shoe? Because in my mind, like, I know the brand, it was like, oh, they were there for Michelle Branch. I don't know if you remember. So they were there to see Michelle Branch. I'm like, Kenneth Cole. I'm like, you mean the shoe? Like, no. Oh, yeah, please let him up. So I'm sorry. I didn't mean to digress, but I know the feeling like you can't separate.
I mean, and it's Huda Beauty. It's not like a name like Pat McGrath, right? Which is another makeup person. So yeah, I just, it was one of those easy apply things, when you just like applied a bunch of stuff on LinkedIn. And so the recruiter reached out to me and she was like, we'd love to interview you, whatever. And I started researching and I was like, wow, this is like Kim Kardashian of the Middle East, right? Like at the end of the day, this is what they've branded themselves as. And I went in to
Are they offended by that comparison at all?
I'm sure they don't love it, but it's all over the place. Like that's what people relate them to. Some people, even in the comments of videos, would be like, you look just like Kylie Jenner or whatever, there's a lot of similarities, right? With the looks.
I get it, but I'm just wondering, not to dish out.
I think Mona is friends with them. Yep. So like, I'm sure they're not flattered, but not offended,
no one wants to be compared, but if you're going to get compared, you're getting compared to like a super global brand, right?
Exactly.
So not the worst thing that could happen.
Exactly. And I was seeing like, the Instagram page has a lot of followers, and specifically the YouTube page was doing well. It had like 3 million subs, but it was very like the normal beauty influencer content, like tutorials and stuff. So I was like, I don't know if it's for me. I went for the interview and they were lovely. Mona and Huda, when I interviewed with them, really excited about this idea of like a docuseries type of YouTube show and stuff. So I ended up taking the job and just basically helping to build that production wing of the brand, because they did outsource a lot of stuff for like campaigns, but social wise, it was more of like a raw, gritty, which she didn't ever want to lose, but we could always elevate, so like background gets elevated, equipment gets elevated, lighting gets elevated. And so, I did that for a while, but ultimately like it was just beauty content, at the end of the day. And for me, as somebody who had done so much in terms of storytelling and really intellectual type of content, it was just hard. So I decided to go and finally just do my own thing, which was the plan. from day one, when I said, I'm going to move back to Dubai, I'm like, I'm going to take all my years of experience and like market myself here. Right.
Yep.
Which is what I've been able to do, luckily. And I've been able to do some cool gigs. But I think like what I've learned in my entrepreneurship is that you get to choose your clients for sure. I have the liberty or the luxury of that. But to the WhatsApp thing, like I choose how I work now, you know? So it's like, if you're going to be like that, if you're going to be disorganized, like we can't work together. Because as you know, production is planning, organization, implementation, and the final execution, right? Because a lot of times too, people will be like, have these great ideas, but to actually get it done is like a whole nother thing. You know this, we talk about this all the time.
Of course.
Which I give you so much respect. Like you're like, I'm going to do a podcast, like done, set it up and done well. Like not just like, like throw, stuff on the wall.
I mean, it's a long time coming. The thing is, again, podcast is another word that's getting thrown around, just like we were talking content and cinematic. I've been wanting to do this for at least 5 years. And I've just now gone around to it just because.
But you have a full-time job too.
Well, not just that. I've moved around. I was telling my mom yesterday, since 2007, I've moved 11 times.
Wow.
4 of those times were across continent.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So I've moved. This is the longest I've been in one city for longer than 3 months.
Wow.
Never mind, whether a visit or whatever. I mean, obviously part of it is COVID, et cetera, but it's the most settled I've been in a really long time. And that was conducive to actually executing it. But the idea has been there, and I've finally been able to put the pieces together.
Yeah.
And when it was time to just pull the trigger, I was like, oh, I'm doing this. I'm going to do it right.
Yeah.
So I'm fortunate enough.
I mean, people don't even get to that point.
For sure. No, luckily, I think what I have going for myself is, I think a lot of people, it's not about talking a big game. Just like working out is a habit. I'm super disciplined. Everything is like, your voice is a muscle. Waking up in the morning is kind of like a muscle. If you teach, it's a habit, right? So one thing I've been able to get past kind of early on is that, achieving is a science, fulfillment, art, etc. But I've been able to plan and execute. I've done enough executing that I know because there's a lot of factors that stop you from doing that.
Yeah.
I've worked that out kind of early on. So I know the mechanics of planning something and the steps it takes to get there. Luckily, I have enough practice that it's just a matter of doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas most people, again, a lot of people are super talented, super skilled, but they don't have enough experience planning something and seeing it through.
Yeah.
Because of all the fears and the barriers and stuff.
And
like
also
that.
too, like they genuinely they want to do it, but like you said, they just don't know what it's actually going to entail. And I mean, it's not, we're not curing cancer here in production, right? Yeah. But it's the art of doing it, and actually not just talking about like all the things you're excited to do. Because even me, like I have that bad habit where there's a documentary idea I want to do. It's like, you're always like, just go do it. Like, what are you waiting for? And I'm like, yeah, but like it has to be this way and it has to be that way. I actually have a full treatment for 2 documentaries that I've written and done.
Well, that's what connected us, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, we were talking about that because I want to get into that as well. Not to say that I won't, but you might have 10 ideas. If you can execute on 1 or 2, you're that much further than most people who actually don't get, again, not that we're better than, it's just.
No, we have the skill set.
The mechanics,
I mean, literally, for me, I mean, I don't have the skill set that you have in terms of the technical stuff. But
it's not about that. The knowledge you bring to the table is priceless. I mean,
Thanks, dude. I mean, I can show you how to script a documentary, no problem.
Great.
You just got to deal with the, all the technical stuff with me.
I love it.
But yeah, I think definitely, even working for myself now, like I get gigs. It's very gig based, right? As a freelance producer, and it's cool. Like I get to choose what I want to do. I even had the luxury the other day being like, I don't really want to do, because a lot of what I'm getting requested for, because I came from Huda Beauty, is like social content. Yep. And that is the reality of the world we live in. I get it, but I'm choosing not to go that route because...
Or you're more selective, probably.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, no real, like, I shouldn't say that, but no real producer...
Like, no real, I shouldn't say that.
No, but like, no real producer is going to want to work on social content only. Like, everybody who wants to be like, they want to work on a Hollywood film. Like I wouldn't, I shouldn't say like, maybe that's a dream of somebody. I don't want to squash someone's dream. You can do social production isn't that hard. It's like, pretty seamless. Like literally that's the creation of what an influencer is, right? Turn on your phone inside.
But that's kind of where, I don't want to say it's the new Hollywood, but the old model is kind of disappearing, right?
I agree. But people still watch Game of Thrones. People still, tune into Netflix for that kind of high quality production, right? Yeah. So this notion that social only, I want to grow my Instagram page.
But I'm saying if you cut your teeth on that today.
Yes. It's a great skill set to have.
You're at the forefront of whatever happens next, right?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's what Quibi was supposed to be, right? In theory, they just hit it at a bad time because of Corona. Mm-hmm. And if people don't know Quibi, it was like a mobile, vertical content so that you could consume while holding it like this. And it went under because nobody was out and about anymore. Yep. But I guess from the whole social is relentless, right? Even YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I mean, we both saw The Social Dilemma. It's designed to have you addicted and have you waste your time on those platforms, right? That's the whole premise. So how I want to be involved in that now is going to be in more limited capacity. So it's whereas before probably I would have been yes, you're a social only brand, let's do it. Now it's I'd rather work with a brand that has other avenues, and social is one of them. Speaking
of The Social Dilemma, how much has that factored morally for you as far as the things that you do? Because I mean, obviously if people are either watching this or listening to it on the different, platforms. Yeah. It's not that they're wasting their time. For instance, for me, after The Social Dilemma, for instance, on YouTube, you're supposed to put end cards, go to the next. Yes. I'm doing none of that because I'm not trying to be anti-YouTube. I mean, obviously, YouTube wants you to stay on the platform or any other platform. The point is to stay on that platform as long as possible. I'm not intentionally trying to not have that happen, but I won't encourage it because it's playing to it. So my moral compass was there's something I can do to limit that. I'm just, for those who are interested in this content, they're consuming it. And then what they do is up to them. I'm not going to do my part in okay, go watch another one of my videos. Do it if you want.
Well, I think you're differentiating between conscious viewing, unconscious viewing. So that's my issue is I did feel for a time I was perpetuating this disease of wanting to be like somebody or whatever it is that keep young girls hooked or guy, whatever. But of course, at the end of the day, there's quality content to be had. And just because you tune in on YouTube doesn't make it any less or better than a Netflix, for sure. Yeah. That I totally agree with. And I think, it's up to people that have these platforms to have more meaningful conversations. Not all the time, just like a person, right? Absolutely. I always say this, we're multifaceted people. Sometimes I want to watch Love and Hip Hop, but sometimes I want to get the news from CNN. So it's okay to have different facets of it. Yep. I watched a show on Netflix called Black Mirror. Mm-hmm. And there was an episode that just tripped me out.
I only saw 3 of them, but
I only watched the first 2 and I was this is way too weird for me. But the guy was in this constant bombardment of content. It was that one with the guy that's on a bike and he gets points. Oh yeah. And it was content. And I was there is stupid videos. That's a complete waste of your life. You were getting no value. Unconsciously watching that I have a problem with. And I think a lot of, when I say social content, I mean the stuff that's being created specifically only for social. It's it's one thing if you're I have this brand and part of my strategy is to have content on social that people will consume.
What if social becomes the only thing that's out there? I mean, I don't think TV disappears, but radio's days are numbered.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's either streaming or
print
whatever.
Print is dead.
Do you know what I'm saying? So a lot of things are kind of moving away from, there was I don't know, the platform. I mean, the content might be similar, but it's no longer on a, I mean, the whole on-demand, you saw what on-demand did, right?
Yes.
DVR and all that stuff. What if we all go social? What if suddenly everything is social?
Technically,
we're almost there.
Yeah. Even Netflix, streaming services, right? Digital streaming, whatever. I think my problem becomes when it's mindless scrolling, and Facebook tried with Facebook Watch to have shows that you would actually tune into. And I'm sure IG will go that route if they haven't already. I don't know if they have already.
They're competing with so much.
That's the thing. It's such a competition for eyeballs. And I think the problem for me is listen, we're talking about different things. If you want to have a show and you wanted to stream on YouTube, Liza Koshy had a really good show on YouTube. It was actually great. I watched the whole series. It was great. She's great, I mean, she's a very nice person, by the way. I met her when I worked for HuDa, and she was hella cool. She still edits her own YouTube videos.
Props to her. Like she seems super raw and real. I love that about her. And I think that's her secret sauce. Yeah,
and her team, like her manager, they're all just good people. So anyways, those kinds of things, fine. My problem is like the garbage that some people just want to throw up just to make themselves famous, you know? I think that's the whole idea of this like influencer, right? Like I had an epiphany when I was in LA one time because we were dealing with like a woman who was very seasoned A-list celebrity type, and she was like punctual and she was very poised, and literally her talking points were things I had read in magazines. Like she was, as Liza Koshy would say, PR trained, right? yeah. She said that. Liza Koshy would be like, I'm PR trained.
It's like the highest certificate you could possibly get in that world, right?
But I realized like there's this new breed of celebrity that is the influencer, right?
Agreed, yeah.
And they've literally just turned on a phone or a camera in their room and they've gained all these fans, but they haven't been vetted. They haven't been vetted by managers, agencies. They're just kind of being exposed to the public. And so what they say goes, which listen, there's a lot of great influencers that do really beautiful, great content, but
the barrier to entry is so much
exactly. And so as a result, you have literally millions of videos being uploaded every second or whatever they said.
And there's no arbitration. No one decides how good something is or not.
Exactly.
You're kind of in there with people who are amazing and people who are just, you know.
Exactly.
My nephew is 6 years old, right? I asked him last year.
His YouTube channel?
No, but I asked him, what you want to do? He's like, I want to be a YouTuber.
Yeah.
That's what someone wants to do now for a living.
I mean, you could make real good money.
But I'm saying like he obviously is not aware of the money factor. It's just that's what's hip to a 5 or 6 year old.
Yeah.
Do you know what
that's
I mean?
How they're watching that's how they've been watching their content. I remember I had a supervisor at CNN. His name was Stefan Simons. He was German, big German guy.
The Germans.
He talked like this. He's a really big guy. He was such a cool guy, but he had kids and he's like, Neda. He used to call my name like that, like Neda.
You sound like Arnold.
Yeah, that's how he was. I wish I could put a picture up of him. He's like a Schwarzenegger. He'd be like, we are dinosaurs. You know, like my daughter, she doesn't even know what television is. Like she just watches YouTube, you know, and this was like 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a shift. I guess my issue is like the ones that are like, I want to grow my Instagram page because I want to be famous or whatever. It's like, no, as someone who's a producer, like at their core that has done storytelling, like it's just hard to be fulfilled with that, you know?
Yeah.
I think if you're in your 20s, you just want to like be part of something, it's super cool. But you know, I'm getting older. Like it's just not something that ultimately is fulfilling to me. What is fulfilling is creating storylines and basically making something that has some sort of an impact, whether it's just entertainment for 5 minutes, but good entertainment, you know, not like that was so dumb. Like, why did I watch that? You know, even sometimes I'm human. Like I've been on TikTok once for like an hour.
That's not a crime.
I'm never getting that time back. But and I say that because I have a very good friend, my best friend in New York. Her name is Shakira. She works for The Late Show. With Shakira. Yeah. She's amazing. I didnam realize my entire TikTok feed, because of the work I used to do, was like makeup stuff, which is why I was always like, this is such a weird, why am I watching all this? Or dancing, you know? Yep. She was telling me there's this whole, and maybe you already know this whole emerging TikTok world where it's like really deep videos. Like people are like talking about real stuff. And she shares some stuff and I was like, this is really beautiful. Like I'm good with that because that's connecting us as opposed to creating this like barrier of like, I'm being entertained by someone else that you know?
Agreed. Yep.
So there are really raw, authentic conversations being had on social and I'm all down for that. But
yeah, I feel like to your point, I feel like a lot of platforms get hated on because of what the prevailing content that does well on that platform.
Yes.
But that's not a fault.
No, it's the public. It's the people. Mm-hmm. It's the people.
But you know, it's like, you know, a lot of people say you have to go where the public is, right? So if the public likes to consume this, at what point do you have to make content? Like, are you dumbing down the content?
Yes.
You know,
I know
to appease the, you know, it's chicken or the egg. It's, you know, I don't know. You know, we could talk for hours about
that
how
stuff
to
is
solve that.
Definitely, I think, within the entertainment world, like a huge social dilemma that they're having.
Yeah, agreed.
Because one part of social that I don't like, which is a reason that I think also too, if I'm completely honest, I've shied away from it more, is everybody wants numbers. Like there's real time results, right?
It's I mean, like that obsession with how many views, how many subscribers.
Exactly.
That's a new currency. Like there was a time, whether if you're a musician or an artist, before they used to care about how many units you've pushed or sold. Now it's how big is your following, how many eyeballs.
Exactly.
So it's
and
disgusting.
You can do cheap stuff to get those eyeballs. You can get, to get the clicks.
They're not quality. They're not people who I'd rather have 10 people watching this.
Yeah.
Watching or listening to this podcast that watch it end to end than having 1 million watch it a second or 10 seconds,
like we could shave my head, you'd probably get like another 500 views.
Do you want to do that next time?
Not really. Like what value is being added? There's just so much stuff like that. And it's a huge dilemma.
But to your point, everything isn't necessarily about value adding. I mean, there's room for, I feel like there's an audience for everything, and it's all a taste thing. One thing isn't better than, if I think sugar tastes better than salt and you think salt, you're not wrong. I'm not wrong. It's just do you, I'll do me, whatever. It's all good. But to your point, I just feel like the battle for the numbers and you're placing your worth on something that is external. Like I hate to sound preachy. I just feel like maybe it's time we looked inward a little more, not a lot, just a little more, and just reconnect there.
No, I totally agree with you.
I don't love where we're headed because of that. It's really
and the brands follow suit, right? Because
of course,
I remember thinking like I'm good friends with a production manager that does Huda's campaigns, her beautiful makeup campaigns, and she has the luxury, this girl, of sort of just making sure it's the most beautiful production with like a beautiful storytelling or whatever. Yep. But they don't usually perform well on social because it's not made for social. It's not a social friendly video. It's very much like, I always say the video, a commercial you would watch before a movie, like the Dior, j'adore Dior, right? Like those kinds of things. But it must be so liberating to just focus on like creating something that's beautiful and like you're proud of and they're proud of, and it's like a super high level of production.
Agreed,
But the reality is most companies now are like, but how does it perform on social? And so then you're having to create for social, which just changes a lot of things.
Yeah, it's a tough one to solve for, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely something I never dealt with extensively until here. And also to Dubai is very agency heavy.
Yeah, for sure.
So you have a lot of like marketing and this kind of thing. I think in New York and LA, still you have like those quality production, old school like situations.
Everything's morphing, but yeah, I agree with you. Dubai seems less grounded. I feel like a little more, not show offy. It would be wrong to paint it in that light because it's multidimensional. Even if people only see the flash and the material stuff, there's more to it for sure. But
for sure, yeah.
I agree with you. So what's next for Neda?
What's next for Neda? Let's see. Going to be doing a lot more podcasts with you. No, I'm just kidding.
Every week.
I don't know. It's interesting because like I just in October went, rogue. Had a couple clients, and like anyone who's looking for, this career path, like there are the two types of routes, right?
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask what you'd recommend. So go ahead.
Like as a producer, it's great to have a steady paycheck for sure. You get a salary, you do work for the brand you're attached to. And there's different places you can produce for, right? Like my friend I told you works for a late show, a late night talk show. She used to work at CNN. Like you can always do different things.
The Last Week Tonight?
No. The late show with Stephen Colbert.
Okay.
Yeah. CBS, with Letterman's show.
Yep.
But that whole world, right? Like there's that show. And then, we talked about Jon Stewart coming back as well. But you're tied to a show. You're tied to a common, like a whole team, a whole theme, repetitive, right? It can get old really quickly.
Sure.
The nice thing about CNN, and I always tell people, like it was the best university to go to. I mean, all of us say this, all of my friends that are now doing all these different things, man, we learned so much. And like, it was being taught the best way to do everything. So we constantly kept that standard wherever we went.
The level is so high. I mean, you're
it's a well-oiled machine. We used to joke when we were there, because, when you're with your friends and you're like bitter about whatever, you could put a body into that seat and it would work because the systems were in place and the training was there. So it was like, literally, you would be trained for weeks with manuals and you have mentors and senior producers that are teaching you. And it was just a great environment to be in. And the nice thing about it is there's so many different buildings within that. So there's CNN.com, there's CNN Espanol, there's HLN. Broader, it's Time Warner. So there's Cartoon Network. Some people I know went to Cartoon Network from CNN, which is nuts, right? They're like doing stuff with cartoons now. NBA TV. But so every time I got bored, I would go to a different unit. I would go to a different department, literally a whole new space. The variety was there. Yeah, it was, and variety is the spice of life, right? Like as somebody who's an expat kid, I mean, I bet you if I did the math too, 2007, I'm sure I moved as much as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also partly why we connected.
Yes,
so quickly. We share that in common. We're easily bored unless we love what we're doing.
Exactly.
But we're also well versed on a lot of things.
Yeah.
So we love variety and we like stability. You know, we seek stability, but stability after a while is like, okay, on to the next.
And I told you, we were talking about this. I'm big on spaces. So it's like, and a very nice guy that I know has been at CNN 20 years. He put it on his LinkedIn, and I know where he's been working for 20 years is the same desk in the same newsroom in the same floor of the same building. Yeah. And it's like, I would die. Like, I need to change it up. Even if it's as simple as like, I go to the 3rd floor now instead of the 7th floor. Like,
change of scene, anything like, just flip the kitchen for me. Instead of going right, let me go left.
Exactly. Because otherwise I feel like you're limiting your opportunities. And I feel like I've learned so much more because I changed it up a lot. And
there's always a trade-off. Listen, there's a trade-off. I mean, stability.
Yes.
Has a trade-off or a tax that you pay on it. And then moving around a lot has a tax that you pay on it.
For sure. I mean, CNN was, they had a rule that once you got a full-time, like a new position, 6 months before you can apply for a new one. Because I wasn't the only one doing this. Like
it's
everybody is very like eager to work in different departments. But they encouraged it. Like you would do a passport, they would call it, like in a different department. So for a whole week I spent with .com because that was at that time like very new. You know, now they're killing it. But it was like .com's the future, video, TV is going to be dead. And they doubled down a long time ago on that. So that part of it, the stability is great. Like I said, CNN was a special situation, but other places it's like very like the same thing, the same people, whatever. Freelancing, spice of life, variety, all that. But man, it is a hustle. You are
the lulls will kill you.
Yeah. And not only that, like I am not a social person. People always think like, oh, you're so like extrovert. No, like it's exhausting. I hate it. I will do it because I have to. And I think, you know, my good friend who's Persian, we were talking about this, our parents like made us this way. Like I play
it's
piano.
It's not a choice.
I play piano. Azadeh plays violin. And both of our parents used to do this. Like, Neda, like, piano bazi kon. Like, come downstairs and play piano. Like, I'm 8. And like, come downstairs, like, knots in your stomach. Like, hi, everybody. Like, let me perform.
I'm so excited to be here right now.
Yeah. And I'm going to perform and put on his face, but inside I'm like dying and shake everyone's hand. So like, I'll do it, but like, I don't like it. And a big part of being your own business and being an entrepreneur is networking, you know, going and meeting people and et cetera. So that part of it's been challenging. I've been tapping into like and it's COVID. So I'm like, I really just want to stay at home and like in a ball. I mean, they didn't see, but I was like, did you disinfect the headset? Like, I'm very paranoid.
I get it.
So yes, if you are a person who likes to grind and hustle, and there's so many positives to being on your own. Like I work on my own schedule. I work with who I want to work with. You make your own rates. Like I feel like I'm compensated much better on my own because I'm making my own rates. So that part of it's definitely great. But yeah, sometimes I miss like a full-time check. So I've been like looking and seeing like, oh, Vice is here. Interesting. Like maybe I go, you know, like it's tempting. My husband's like, seriously, it's been 2 months, like on your own, like, come on. And I've been making money. So which is nice. But yeah, it's just like, dude, do I really want to do that continually? Because as you know, and people should know, producer, it's gig based. Once you're done, it's not like you have clients that are like it's a one-time thing most of the time. Maybe if they're doing it again, but it's such a big purchase for people that they usually just do it once in a while, if that, you know.
I mean, there's demand for it, but you know the budgets vary from like no budget to like.
Don't get me started on the no budget people. I'm like, I've gotten to a point. I'm 37, and I think, you know, your coaching has helped me a lot too, because Zan is a great entrepreneur coach. He, you know, I think being Middle Eastern, being an immigrant, being a woman, like I had a hard time demanding like a certain rate for my services, you know? And I know I'm really good at what I do. It's not that I'm insecure about it, but it was just always this weird thing of like, in Farsi, we call it tarof. Like, no, you please, no, please, no, you, no, you, no, you. And it's like, you get screwed in the end.
Yep.
And so I've been much more forthcoming with like, yo, you see my background. Like, what do you mean you want to pay that much? And so there's so much of that I've noticed. It's a haggle
culture.
Yes.
I mean, it's,
Yes. And there's people willing to do it for much less, which is like, go with them, you know? Like, you can drive a Mitsubishi. No disrespect to Mitsubishi. But wouldn't you rather drive a Rolls Royce? Like, that you're going to have to pay for what you're getting, you know?
What saddens me is a lot of people, you know, it's called false economy, where it's like, let's go with the cheap. And then they'll hire someone who's a lot more expensive to fix what the cheap couldn't do.
Yeah.
That's not always the case. Yeah. But man, come on. You know, people have their own tempo, their own speed. They'll find out, you know?
Yeah. And you can get quality. Like, I met a very talented young editor that we ended up hiring full time. He's amazing. And he's inexpensive because he's young, right? Like, at the end of the day, he has like 2 years of experience, but like, he just gets it. I agree. And there are some times where you pay a lot of money and they're garbage, right? But I think there is a false economy here of like, well, I can get somebody to do it for half the price. Like, well, great. That's not worth my time. So go ahead, you know?
I think there's always the right client for you and vice versa. You know, when you connect, it makes sense. It's not as easy as having something steady, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm such a fan of what you do. And I could immediately tell that you were really good at what you do.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, we met on that podcast set. That was awesome. Yeah. Like work-wise, we did the podcast thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for taking the time, Neda. This was great. And I'd love to have you back on when either you're working on a documentary or on something super exciting, which, you know, I'll give you a few months.
Okay. That's the timeline.
Yeah. A few months to a year.
I want to say inshallah, but that also might mean like it's never going to happen. So inshallah, in a good way.
Yeah. You can say hopefully / inshallah, right?
Hopefully / inshallah. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Neda.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I'll see you soon.
Cheers. Thanks.